So we've looked at sunshine and we've looked at the importance of it, and I trust today will be a nice day to get into the sun because it's not too hot, not yet. And this morning we're going to have a look at the importance of water. We looked at what sleep does for us every night. Tomorrow morning I'll be looking in detail at our subject, trusting God. In fact, my 11 o'clock presentation is called To Renew the Mind. And we looked at the things that must not go into the human body if you're looking for optimum performance. And I'm sure everyone's been practicing breathing through their nose and out through their nose. Yesterday we spent the morning on nutrition. And yesterday we also looked at the importance of taking everything in moderation. And the last and certainly not least is exercise. Isn't Carlos an inspiration? In fact, when I saw him, I thought it was a young man. His fit body, his stance, and you get a little close and you can see he's not that young, but what an inspiration that we can enjoy, you know, even up into, I think he's in his late 70s now. Yeah, so that's, it's good to have illustrations of the results of keeping these laws. Our exercise coordinator at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, his name is Howard. He's worked with us for over 20 years. I gauge it on the age of his eldest son. Maybe he's 21 years. I think Laz is 20 now. And the guests, and he's turning 60 this year, and the guests think that he's in his late 30s. That's quite incredible, isn't it? And he's our exercise coordinator, and he certainly spends a lot of time in exercise. But first of all, before we go into water, because these are the two we're going to look at this morning, I want to look in detail at exercise. And the most powerful form of exercise is the high-intensity interval training. Now, the reason why this is a powerful form of exercise is because of the effect that it has on the body. But what excites me about this form of exercise is it only takes 15 minutes a day. Are you interested? One man said to me, he said, I know I should exercise, but I don't have an hour a day to do a 5-kilometre jog. I said, Dave, you don't need an hour a day. So this high-intensity interval training, as the name implies, these are intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery, and they're usually done for a cycle. In the book Body by Science, Dr. Doug McGuff, he shows us why this is such a powerful form of exercise. Now, he was looking at exercise for his heart patients because he's a cardiologist. He wanted a form of exercise that was reachable, that was attainable, and that strengthened the heart. And so he looked historically, and he came across the high-intensity interval training, and he saw that it was first being implemented probably before the wars broke out. And he found a German physiologist who was putting his athletes through it and getting better times, you know, in the games. And then everything was lost, the First War, and it wasn't long after that, the Second World War. And the next time he saw mention of it was in about the 1980s, where a Japanese trainer was called Tabata, was putting his girls through the high-intensity interval training. And he got them to do 20 seconds high intensity and a 60-second recovery for a cycle of 6. They were figure skating. That's what they were doing. And he found when it time for the games, they had an edge. And isn't that what it's all about? Because in the Olympic Games, every single person that goes there is the best in their country. And sometimes it can be a split second, can't it? So that's what the trainers are looking for, something that will give their athletes an edge, just this little bit of an edge. And he found that they certainly did. In fact, in some gyms today, you've still got the Tabata protocol. There's like a cycle of different high intensities, you know, rowing machine, push-ups, rebounder, you know, you've got different things. What Doug McGuff came at, he came at a protocol that he felt that was more probably in line with the average person, even though it was more high intensity, 30 seconds, it was a 90-second recovery time. And he did this for a cycle of 6. And he, as every good investigator does, they try it on themselves first, is that right? And he couldn't believe the effect. Within a few weeks, he was sleeping better. Within a few weeks, he found that at the end of the day, he was not as tired. Within a few weeks, he found his digestion was improving. His bowel habits were improving. In fact, it seemed to affect every single part of his life. And his mood. He found that he wasn't getting as irritable. And so he was impressed. And yet, if you've done the maths on that, being generous, it's no more than 15 minutes a day. I've read a few books on this. One's called Fast Exercise by Dr. Michael Mosley. Also, Dr. Al Sears, he's called the Exercise Doctor. His book PACE, which means Progressive Acceleration of Cardiopulmonary Exertion. I'll repeat all that in a minute. In fact, in case it's just PACE. His book is PACE. And so, you know, the proverb says, in the multitude of counsellors there's safety. So whatever I present, I look at it from different angles, from different writers, and you always pick up something. Every writer puts a slightly different slant on it. And so I began to implement this. And 30 seconds doesn't sound much. Try it. So what is high intensity? It's running for your life. What Michael and I do, we run up the hills and we walk down the hills at Misty Mountain. We walk up the next hill and down. And I really like going on the other side of the canal because the road's so rocky. And I wear barefoot runners. And barefoot runners aren't great on all the rocks and things. And so there's a track the other side of the canal and it's grass. And it's going up and down a little bit. But I found a track this morning. It was called, I think, the Pine Forest track. Wow, that got me really good. But something touched me. I don't know whether it's stinging nettle. Do you have stinging nettle here? And I thought, oh, I wonder if that's this poison ivy I hear about. But it touched my leg, so I didn't go back that way. I came down the road. So high intensity really is anything that will get the heart rate up and the breathing increased. So if you can't run, it might be push-ups. If you can't do push-ups, it might be push-ups on the wall. If you're on the rebounder, it can be jogging on the rebounder. Most of the research has been done on the exercise bike. I saw also a documentary on this. And what they did was they chose a girl she was a journalist. She was probably about 38. She looked fairly slim, not as little as me, but, you know, she looked very nice. And what they did with her is they got her to do the 30 seconds high intensity, but they allowed her 15 minutes recovery. And they did this for a cycle of 3. So they did it slightly different. And what they did was before they put her through this, they measured, you know, her torso, her weight, you know, all the basic things. And they were filming her as she's going through it. And when she's to the end of the 30 seconds, you could see it was a real challenge to her. And sometimes it was on the exercise bike. The beauty of the exercise bike is that you're holding on. So for people who are a little unstable on their feet, people who have ankle, knee or hip problems, it's a lot easier, and you can cycle as hard and fast as you can, and then your recovery time can be just slowly cycling. They have discovered that in recovery time, it's far more effective if you move, but at a slower rate. You just move a little slower. For Michael and I, running up the hills, walking down the hills. How do you know when you're ready back for the high intensity? Your body will tell you. You've got your breath back. The heart rate has settled down a little bit. And you'll find if you go back too soon, then it's hard to even do the 30 seconds. I always count, because if I don't count, I won't go 30. Because at 25, my body's starting to say, that'll do. That's enough. So push yourself to that 30. Al Sears says in his book, he had a lady who he was one of his patients. She did 7 seconds high intensity and she needed 15 minutes to recover. I give you that story because not everyone's quite that unfit. But his book, the first P is progressive. This is progressive. The more that you do it, the easier it gets. Your fitness is not determined by how hard and fast you go. Your fitness is determined by your recovery time. So this journalist, this female journalist who they were putting through with this, she didn't exercise. And so they went a little bit lighter with her and allowed her 4 minutes to recover. But I think she did it for something like 3 months. 3 months they put her through it. And she said the same thing as Doug McGuff said with his. She said, I can't believe it, I'm not getting as tired in the afternoon, I'm sleeping better. She said, everything in my life has improved by just taking this little chunk in the day. But you know what the surprise was? When they measured her, she'd lost 2 inches off her waist. Now she just did it for fitness. It's balanced out her body weight. It's like the program that we're putting you through, 2 days juicing and then eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper. We find that the overweight take off weight, lose weight. We find that the underweight put on a bit, and we find those that are the right weight basically just stay the same. What Doug McGuff said, and I know my son said, a friend of his, he was small here and big here, and as he exercised, this came in and this came out. It just helps to balance the weight in the body, because we live in an amazing body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself. So you just start where you are and you just start with what you can do. But what I'm ever thankful to Doug McGuff for is he takes you inside the cell. So that's where we're going to go now. And I'm going to take you somewhere that I've been getting you familiar with all week. So the glucose goes into the cell and it goes through a 20-step pathway. And the 20-step pathway, how much energy, students?
3.
Nearly 2. And that's the anaerobic pathway, called the anaerobic pathway because it doesn't use oxygen. The end result of this 20-step pathway is the chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into the powerhouse, called the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, students, how much energy? 36. Yay! 18 times more energy. That's why the old saying says you will receive more energy than you expend on your morning exercise. Can you see why? Because this is the aerobic pathway. And the aerobic pathway uses oxygen. And we also looked at how in the muscle cells specifically, you've got little bunches of grapes and they're little molecules of oxygen. So the glucose goes in. Number 1, it gets sent to the cell. Number 2, it gets stored as glycogen. Your quick release glucose stores, that's why you don't have to eat before you exercise, because you've got glycogen stores. And let's draw our fat cell, because I want to show you what happens. And on that high carbohydrate diet, people are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now this pathway, and we discussed this is a very fast pathway. Whereas the 8th step is a lot slower. So let me show you what happens in the cell with your high intensity. Let's go to Doug McGuff's one. This is the one I usually do. So when you're getting to the end of your first set of high intensity, 20 steps speeds up, 8 steps speeds up. That's not a surprise. But because of the faster revs of this one, more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into the powerhouse. So the body has to store it on the side as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid. But what's incredible is that when you're in recovery time, your liver converts the lactic acid to pyruvate and feeds it into the powerhouse. Do you know what that means? Two things are happening here. When you're in recovery time, you're burning just as much fuel as when you're running for your life, and in recovery time, all the lactic acid is being mopped up. And that is one of the reasons these athletes have an edge. They have an edge because of this very process that's happening inside the cell. So it's not an excuse because you can't go any further when you say, let's look at the view. If you're climbing a mountain, it's actually important. You look at children, they never jog. They run or stop, or they run or stop. Isn't that true? You look on the soccer field, what are they doing? Kicking the goal, and then everyone walks back to their place. Basketball, and then the ball goes in and everyone goes back. Let's go to the African plains. No animal jogs. They're either still, or then, oh, here's the tiger, run for their life. It's interval. When I was a little girl, the games we used to play in the playground were hopscotch. And when it's my turn, that's high intensity doing the hopscotch, hop, 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 hop. Or skipping. When I'm skipping, wow, have you seen how some people skip? When I was in the Bronx, of a Saturday night, the teenagers would get out on the footpath with the ropes. And they'd have 2 ropes, and they're just... they asked me if I wanted to go. I said, I'll just watch. Whoa, they're just chatting to each other, and the ropes are going like this. So the one that's in the ropes, there's your high intensity. So this interval, these intervals of high intensity, now the research is showing is the most effective form of exercise because it mops up that build-up of lactic acid in the cell. Nobody ever dies of a heart attack doing the high intensity interval training, but there are stories of people keeling over and dying on a 5K jog. Because on a 5K jog, what's building up, students? The lactic acid, yeah. And what they find is if a person's got a triathlon, the best way to prepare is this. Training like this gives them the ability to do the 5K jog or the, 10K, whatever they're doing in the triathlon. I was watching the Olympic Games. I love watching the Olympic Games, I think, because we love excellence, is that right? And I was travelling, and every time I went to an airport, I'd have a look in the big screen, what are we up to? And I think it had the 10-kilometre run. Do they have a 10-kilometre run? Anyway, it's a big one. And there were these 2 real skinny Africans up the front. And the commentator was saying, you can see these people haven't run in a race much before. It's the first time they've entered. They're up the front too fast. Let's go back. Ah, yes, here are the favourites. Here's the Russian, here's the American, here's the Australian, here's the Swede. They're doing the sensible thing. They're biding their time. And then I didn't see it again. And then next airport, I go and have a look, and apparently it was the last event. And here's the oval with first, second and third. Guess who was first and second? The Africans. They're probably running from tigers, you know. So that commentator had to eat his words. I read a book called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall, and it's about the barefoot running. And his story is interesting. I saw it at my daughter's house because I'm such a reader. I'm always looking for books to read. And she said, yeah, take it, Mum, I've got two. Oh, that was a fascinating book. He was a runner and he had hamstring problems, he had lower back, he had pelvic problems. So he decided to take a few months off, travel the world and interview runners. And he also looked at the history. And as he interviewed, he actually found something interesting. He found that barefoot runners don't get hamstring problems, don't get lower back, because barefoot runners, and you try running barefoot on your heel, you never will. Barefoot runners run on their toes. They run on the balls of their feet. And then historically, he found Abibi Bikila. Have you heard of Abibi Bikila? Abibi Bikila was an African who won gold in 1960, 1964 Olympic Games. Barefoot runner. Nike and Reebok hate him. You know what I mean? So I was so interested in the barefoot running. And it was another book where the guy's an evolutionist and talks about the evolving and this. And then he goes to the foot doctors and he studies the foot and he says, it's an incredible design. And I thought, make up your mind, mate. Did we evolve or were we designed? And the foot is an incredible design. Because when you run on your toes, your balls of your foot, your toes spread out, your toes, it's incredible what happens. Your toes grab, your big toe grabs, and what happens, all the little muscles, teguments, tendons and ligaments, they're designed to cushion as you run. You look at children, how do they run? Always on their toes. Always in their toes. But what's happened with these joggers today, they've built up the heel so that people heel strike. And what this guy found was that all of his problems were because of those cushioned runners where they heel striked. But the toe strike never has those problems. So that's when I went out and bought my barefoot runners, hoping they'd be a bit cheaper, but they're not. And I started to run in my barefoot runners. Yeah, they don't like the real rocky roads because you know they've got such a thin sole. So when you buy them, the toe and the heel should be able to meet like this when they're new. And I just love those barefoot runners. You just fly when your feet are barely touching the ground. But the next day when I woke up, oh, was I sore. And that's when I realised you use totally different muscles when you toe strike, when you're striking with your toe. I never used to wear joggers, but a friend of mine said, Barbara, just try them. They're like armchairs on your feet. So I got some and I thought, oh, they're pretty good. But no more, no more. Now I have my barefoot runners and I run on my toes. So if you're a runner, make sure you're a toe runner. Also experiment, go on the grass. You will not run with your heel. Your body won't let you, because every heel strike is a jar. It's a jar to the body. And he talks about runners who've been running for years. You know what's happening? Hip, knee, lower back, ankle problems, even when they're late 40s. Starting to go in their 50s. So let's go back to our illustration here. So we've just finished our first set of high intensity, and these are speeding up, but the rate setting enzyme in there always keeps this one a little bit slower. So in recovery time, the liver converts that built up lactic acid back to pyruvate. So when you go back into your next set of high intensity, the lactic acid has been all cleared up. So we're getting to, say, our third set of high intensity, and the glycogen stores are running out. So what the body does now, it causes a release of the human growth hormone. The human growth hormone is very active when we are growing. So as children, our human growth hormone is active. Mine went into retirement at the age of 16. That probably doesn't surprise you. My son William grew 2 inches from 19 to 21. Boys can still be growing. So when I met an 18-year-old in Ireland last year who was 6'6", his father was 6'8", I don't know where he's going to go. He's 6'6" at 18. So it goes into retirement. And there are a lot of people who are very busy in retirement. So when you are getting to your third set, glycogen stores are running out, we need more fuel. And so the brain causes a release of the human growth hormone, which triggers the activity of hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase is an enzyme, and if you remember yesterday when we looked at fats, the sublingual lipase under your tongue breaks up the saturated fat, the pancreatic lipase and the bile break down polyunsaturated fats. So what fat does this lipase break up? Our stored fats. It's basically what the human growth hormone does is it unlocks the door to the basement to get some more stores out. So hormone-sensitive lipase is released, which starts to break up the fat stores. The human growth hormone causes the body to stop burning as glucose as fuel and become a fat burner. Now we looked at this also earlier in the week, that glucose, it burns at 4 calories per gram. Fat burns at 9 calories per gram. And remember what a calorie is? It's a unit of energy. What Dr. Robert Atkins found is you can be on a 2,500 calorie a day diet that's all carbohydrates and you can put on weight. You can be on a 2,500 calorie a day diet that is high fibre, generous proteins, healthy fats, and you can lose weight. So any book that's still counting calories, sorry, they're back with the dinosaurs. Calorie counting has been shown, it doesn't work. There's calories and there's calories. So when, I don't know if you saw how much olive oil I put on my toast this morning. My toast is covered in olive oil. Fat doesn't make you fat. It wouldn't be nice if I put half a cup on it, would it? No, it's just a little. Can you see why the body starts burning fat as fuel? Because it's going to give more than twice the units of energy that the glucose will give. Because we want a high octane fuel here. This person's running for their life. What are we doing? Going to the 5th gear? The human growth hormone also increases the body's ability to utilise protein. This week we've looked at the importance of eating sufficient protein. That scrambled tofu on avocado on Simple Needs bread, pretty nice, isn't it? I think I could have that every morning. We've looked at the importance of eating adequate protein. We've looked at the importance of not drinking with the meals, so we're not watering down our digestive juices that break down the protein. Now we're looking at another aspect, and that is the high-intensity interval training causing a release of the human growth hormone increases our body's ability to utilise the protein. The last one, it increases the circulation of the blood to the skin. Now we know Carlos's secret. When you increase the circulation of the blood to the skin, you slow down aging because you're nourishing that skin. Perfect health requires perfect circulation. And perfect circulation means my toes are as warm as my torso. My fingers are as warm as my torso. The whole body should be the similar temperature. The movie stars pay $1,000 a week for the human growth hormone. Can you see why? Because their profession is dependent on them looking good, and this keeps them looking good. It slows down aging, nourishes the skin. Well, I'm offering it to you cut price today. 15 minutes high intensity interval training a day will cause a release of the human growth hormone, and it'll remain active for 24 hours. What a bargain. I'm so excited because this is the first week I've been able to get out and exercise because of my broken toe. So what did I do? I did push-ups every